All right, guys, we are back again with COVID cabal. What is going on, people? We got a big COVID cabal today. Very fast COVID cabal though. I got a hard stop at 5 o'clock, so we're gonna roll this 35, 40 minutes. If you are here, as always, drop a comment in the chat. We got Rudy showing up. He knows what time it is. It's time for COVID cabal. Drop a comment in the chat if you are here. I will find you. I will fucking find you if you do not drop a comment in the chat. That's what this is all about. I need those comments pouring in. Bosch, we got Property Prince in here. We got Alan. Let's go, guys. More comments. More comments. Let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. COVID Cabal. Let's fucking go. We got Fox Forger here. We got Uncle Guns. Like, comment, and subscribe. Come on, gentlemen. Ladies. A handful of ladies in here, too. Let's go. COVID Cabal time. It's COVID Cabal time. We got a good show today. I'm drinking an iced lemon zinger tea. It's pretty good. I got to get rid of all this herbal tea that's just been like stacked up in the cabinet for years. No one drinks it, so I'm like, I gotta make it. I gotta make iced tea, big pots of iced tea. Only way to do it. Where is Salmon? Last time we heard about Salmon, he was in Ireland, so he's probably harassing some poor Irish lass right now. It's interesting. I really do wonder where Salmon went. He did it right though. Like, eternal mystery. Salmon should like never show up again. To be so prominent and then just never show up again. That was the move. For those who don't know, there was a big COVID cabal contributor to the chat who in season 1 who disappeared after Pat Stedman's arrest and never to be seen again. Never to be seen again. All right, guys. So we have a few things to talk about today. I do have that long Emerald Robinson thread. It's very long. I don't know if I want to just sit here reading a thread to you guys. I kind of don't want to do that. But I do want to point out a few things in it. And I'm not showing the screenshot of this thread because it is so long. I don't have that many screenshot points here, right? But what I want to talk about with this thread is that there's a lot of things that back in 2020, 2021, season 1, COVID cabal, we talked about, we were all in the background speculating about what was actually happening. And as you guys know, I was very much of the belief that Trump was handling the situation, that he had things under control, in that, he wasn't going to let him steal the election. And that in the end, after January 6th, when he stepped back and let them take power, he did it basically because the consequences of moving forward were too damaging for the country, basically. That if he had tried to fight it, he may have gotten outmaneuvered later on, and it would have sent the country into civil war. And that perspective, that developed perspective, has mostly been validated over time, right? Very big faith position to take, obviously, that the country will survive, that you on your way out of office were able to put enough handful of fail safes in there, enough things to block the agenda, and that on the hopes that the American people would essentially rise up and support you again. And really, at the end of the day, what it came down to was really God. I mean, all the stuff that they threw at Trump, including some assassination attempts, him to survive them, there was definitely a hand of God moment there. Now, I say all that, but, and you guys have probably seen my own commentary kind of expand a little bit from season 1 COVID cabal. Season 1 COVID cabal, I was a young buck, a young lad of how fucking old was I? 32 when we started this stuff. So I was I had that a little less tempered idealism, let's put it that way. I I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I wasn't off base on the fundamentals, right? You guys know. You guys were watching COVID Cabal. I saw the theft. I saw everything going on, and I was optimistic. I trusted Trump. But what I didn't understand was basically the scale of the forces that were up against him. In Emerald Robinson's thread, it's pinned to her profile. I'll just her handle on Twitter is really just at Emerald Robinson. It is a very, very good thread to read. And one of the things I really want to emphasize with this thread, I'm going to read you some excerpts from it, is that it tells you not only very clearly about the fact that there was electronic manipulation of the votes in the 2020 election, but it also shows you that Trump really was outmaneuvered internally in his organization. So there were certain in his cabinet. There were certain things that we were seeing that we thought Trump's not going to let this happen. Trump's fighting against it. And in the end, the reason that things happened the way they did is that Trump and the people who were trying to fight against this lost. They didn't lose the election, but this was a plan started from COVID, but all of these different factions, both from outside of Trump's cabinet to within Trump's cabinet, were all working together to steal this election, to cement the steal, and to inhibit any kind of attempt from Trump to deal with it. So I want to read some of these things to harken back to some of the commentary that we had, right? Some DOJ, okay. Let's begin the story in December 2020. Why? Because President Trump wanted election fraud investigated. He told his team to hire someone to discover the truth about the voting machines. Multiple sources tell me an ex-CIA investigator was hired for the job. That investigator reported that claims of election fraud were overblown. Some DOJ lawyers also wanted election fraud investigated. Those efforts were blocked by Attorney General Bill Barr's staff, including Barr's chief of staff, Will Levi. Levi threatened to quit if any cases were launched. Okay, so you're seeing this right off the bat, right? That attempts from people within the administration to deal with this were blocked by people at certain levels, and often at the very top levels. Also in December 2020, a group of national security analysts briefed the White House that enough evidence of election fraud existed to launch a full U.S. government investigation. In January 2021, several GOP senators were briefed as well. Neither the White House nor the senators authorized the investigation. A few people tried to alert President Trump about the national security analyst briefing and the need for a full investigation in late 2020, but those efforts were blocked by White House counsel Pat Cipollone, according to two sources. Cipollone joined Bill Barr's law firm on January 17, 2024. Chris Krebs, the head of a small agency called CISA, which is inside DHS. You guys remember CISA. You guys remember Chris Krebs, right? When we were talking about this in season 1, this was a big story. Sent out a press release in late 2020 claiming the 2020 election was the most secure election in America's history. Krebs was on a cybersecurity expert. Who hired him? The head of DHS, Chad Wolf. Krebs was hired because he was Chad Wolf's close friend. He worked at CISA coordinating with left-wing organizations like Democracy Works to prepare for the 2020 election. Trump fired Krebs a week after he dismissed Defense Secretary Mark Esper. Okay, remember how big that was? Right? That was a very, very big story. And there was a lot of people, including like Thomas Wichter, who were really, they found it very, very interesting in terms of what happened next and who Trump appointed as acting Secretary of Defense after Esper. Trump removed Esper. Chris Miller and Ezra Cohen were rushed into the Pentagon on November 11th because Esper stopped responding to the White House. White House officials feared a soft coup was taking place. On November 18th, Miller put all special forces under his direct command. So I got to tell you guys, do you guys remember this stuff? This was really big stuff. The fact that Miller, there was all this talk that Miller being in special operations, that there was this, that Trump was setting up like a continuity of government. essentially, that Miller was saying something up in the background. They were trying to prevent Trump. This is what I'm trying to put in perspective here, guys, is that if Trump had persisted, especially as we go through this more, if Trump had persisted in trying to hold on to power, he had within his cabinet, like the military, between the chief of staff, between the former, defense secretary, they were all set up in a coup. All these people need to be arrested and fucking executed. This is a coup against the United States of America. They were all involved in it. Top to bottom. Top to bottom. It's crazy because these were things we didn't understand. Why isn't this happening? Why isn't this happening? We're trying to get information there. Trump, of course, wasn't looking at X as much now. Now, one of the reasons that not only does Trump have a much better team in place now, people he can trust, but people in his cabinet are getting direct feedback from people on X now, which is great because we can point out this guy's full of shit. This guy's not good. This guy's working against you. Trump couldn't see this. He didn't know who he could trust, who he couldn't trust. I can't imagine. This must have been a really hard thing for him, especially considering how much Trump cares about loyalty. This must have been, he's going to be getting some revenge. So now we're going to get into the voting machine stuff. When I was deposed, this is Emerald Robinson, by Dominion lawyers in 2024, I was asked specifically about, okay, she's talking about Smartmatic and Dominion. On November 11th, I don't want to talk about her commentary here. She's talking about Lord Malik Brown, who was a friend of Soros, who was on Smartmatic. Okay. But that was wiped from the site. On November 19, 2020, Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell held a press conference at RNC headquarters. Powell claimed that Dominion brand machines were using Smartmatic software. She also claimed Smartmatic software was developed in Venezuela for dictator Hugo Chavez. By mid-November, public network scans of Dominion made by military intel analysts were available through legal filings in Michigan. What these documents revealed about America's election system was damning. On December 18th, Trump met with Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, and Overstock CEO Patrick Byrne at the White House. And you guys remember, we talked about this a lot. This was a really significant meeting, and we thought for sure it was going to, this was the same day that DNI Ratcliffe's report was due, right? We thought big things were going to be happening. They urged Trump to launch an investigation of the voting machines. White House staffers Pat Cipollone, Eric Hershelman, and Derek Lyons all argued against doing it. Now, one of the things that's interesting here is that people were saying that Mark Meadows had argued against this and Mark Meadows had blocked them. I'm not saying that maybe he did block them or whatever, but it seems very clear here that Mark Meadows was not the impetus behind it because Mark Meadows is still a Trump loyalist. So there is even disinformation coming out about who was responsible for sabotaging that meeting, which I think is really interesting. There's this guy, Pat Cipollone again. December 18th was also the due date for DNI Ratcliffe to submit a report to President Trump on foreign interference in the 2020 election. Ratcliffe missed the deadline. Ratcliffe did not release his report until January 7th, 2021. Note the date of the release. His report stated that the CIA management actively suppressed intel that China interfered in the 2020 election. That's right. The CIA was hiding China's role in the 2020 election, which is treason. So the reason the report couldn't be released is because the CIA was not providing DNI with the information, right? And we learned this later on. Ratcliffe confirmed that China interfered in the 2020 election, that the CIA had tried to hide that fact, but also that this info arrived too late to help President Trump. On January 6th, almost 100 House Republicans and more than 12 GOP senators were ready to object to election results in Congress. Only an emergency could override and halt that day's session. When an emergency happens, special rules apply in Congress. Less than 10 minutes before two reps called a vote for motions to suspend the election certification, Capitol Police claimed that a protest outside might breach the chambers. Key leaders were escorted out. Speaker Pelosi then halted Congress using emergency rules. January 6th was staged. Tier 1 operators and FBI agents present that day in the crowd saw a red Starlight shell fired over the Capitol just before the fake insurrection began. That shell is used to signal the start of battle. And like I told you guys many times about my January 6th experience, right? This is something that we did notice on the ground, that the police started attacking us out of nowhere. There was no provocation for the police attack. There were some individuals who started to do some agitation, but everything really started when, in terms of pushing down the barriers. But the real agitation and the issue started when police started firing tear canisters into the crowd and rubber bullets without provocation, which pushed the crowd forward. This is in the ellipse, which is near where I went in, up against the police wall. And that's when the chaos started. Keep in mind, also, there was the pipe bombing, which got, I guess, canceled, but backup plan at the RNC headquarters. After January 6th, the FBI Washington field office emailed all employees that if they were on the wall, they were required to give a statement. Some agents who didn't volunteer were identified by others. They were required to give statements against their will. Those FD 302s are still secret. The DOJ's OIG later found that FBI had at least 26 confidential human sources who were present on the Capitol on January 6th. None of these were ever prosecuted. On January 7th, 2021, Trump was banned from Twitter. On 8th, Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, Patrick Byrne were all banned from Twitter. The coup was complete. The era of government censorship began. On January 8th, Dominion filed defamation lawsuit against Sidney Powell for $1.3 billion in damages. On January 25th, Dominion filed a similar lawsuit against Giuliani. Suits against Fox, OAN, Newsmax, and others soon followed. So, okay, I'm going to pause here for a moment, because this is the crux of the stuff that I wanted to go into. Because you can now see how this was all planned out. And you have to give them credit where credit's due. They really had all their ducks in the row. They had the right people in place in the administration to sabotage this, and they had the right people in place in the intelligence agencies to sabotage this. There is another section in this whole thread I do want to get back to. But to speed up through some of these things, because it's 100-something post thread. It is very, 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 very good. It's a very good thread. But what she basically tracks is that Dominion and Smartmatic were operating out of Venezuela, which we also talked about back in season 1 COVID Cabal. But what's interesting is how she ties it to the connection between Maduro and Tren del Agua. That basically Tren del Agua, Maduro is the head of Tren del Agua, which is this gang that was designated by Trump as a terrorist organization. People made a big deal about it, but actually what Venezuela is actually, in some sense, at war with the United States, because it's using this gang, which is controlled by the government, to manipulate election results. At least it was using it to manipulate election results. And of course, also, push drugs and migrants into the country. But the point here is that the designation of Tren del Agua as a terrorist organization is connected to the 2020 election because of the linkage between Venezuela's government and Smartmatic. That's what's really important here to understand. Now, I'm going to speed through a lot of the stuff. We're going to talk. There is some things I want to mention just really quickly while we're on the topic of January 6th. I don't want to belabor this too much, but I just want to throw it out here. Okay. I want to throw a couple things out here. So first is Nick Fuentes, all this stuff going on here, how well we are doing, how much Trump's pushing forward. And, now doing martial law in DC, and we're going to be talking about the martial law thing because this is what we'll close on because it's very important. Fuentes is saying that it would be better if Kamala had won the 2024 election. Recall, he encouraged his groypers not to vote in the 2024 election for Trump. Okay. And the argument here, of course, is that, I'm an accelerationist, right? If things could get bad, should get worse. And then more people will wake up. Well, look, I'm not 100% anti-accelerationism in the sense that you need to wake people up. People need to understand what's going on in order to galvanize them for action. And I think it's fair to say that in the end, them not letting Trump win in 2020 and then just doing more work trying to stymie him may have in the end been worse for them than if they hadn't stolen the 2020 election and then became so hated that they really galvanized the public to come out in mass for Trump in 2024, and that now you're really going to have things, you know, over like flipped over, right? Trump now has the mandate to basically end their entire regime, not only in America, but ultimately across the entire West. You will see that happen. Trust me. So to some extent, I'm not saying that like there wasn't a little bit of an argument about accelerationism because you want people to pull the mask off, right? But here's the other part of it. Nothing gets better when you let how do I make this happen? There's a certain point where if you let them keep going, if you let them keep having more and more power, then they legitimately will totally fucking destroy everything. You know, oh, the communists, you know, the communists start to take over New York City. Mandami takes over New York City. Well, that's fine. Let them have their experiment. It'll work. It doesn't work. Didn't work in South Africa. Didn't work in Russia. When you let communists take things over, they take more institutions. They take, and you've given the leeway to take in more institutions. They take more institutions. They take everything. And then you can't fight because you have lost every fucking thing. So why would Nick Fuentes be saying after 4 years of Biden locking up people like me in this country, why would he say it would be better with Kamala? It would not be a better situation at all. And look, what are we supposed to say here? I am not like this pro-Israel guy. But what is the argument now? Well, the Jews are making Trump clean up the inner cities. The Jews are making Trump make American cities like livable again. Like, what kind of fucking argument is that? I'm going to tell you that this guy stinks to high heavens. And I've said this before, and I'm getting a little bit more galvanized about it, not only just because it's personal to me as a January 6er, it's a little bit personal to me that you are on the stage, you're on the landing saying we are taking the Capitol back, keep marching, don't relent, break down the barriers, disregard the police, this Capitol belongs to us now. You are on Capitol grounds and you didn't get arrested? You're a prominent person and you didn't get arrested? I'm sorry, Brandon Straka didn't say half of this stuff. Was literally just standing outside the Capitol. He got arrested. They were trying to fuck his entire life over, and they did for a really long time. So I'm telling you guys this without a shadow of a doubt. And by the way, just because one person is an asset, it doesn't mean other people aren't. But there's no question in my mind that Nick is an asset. There's no question in my mind that he's an asset, or at least that he became an asset at that moment, because there's no way that you get out of that situation. And I've said this before, but I want you guys to pay attention to it. It doesn't just apply to Nick. It applies to anybody. I'm all about people disagreeing with me. There are other people who have different opinions about stuff, but good faith and bad faith. Do you want to win? Do you want to fix things? Or do you just want to see the world burn? Nick just wants to see the world burn. He just wants to see the world burn. He wants things to get worse. His message is fuck it, which is an understandable emotion, but fuck it is not a political strategy. Well, actually, it is a political strategy if you are working for people who are trying to undermine the movement. So I said this earlier, but I want to reemphasize it. When you have a movement that's growing in success and the attacks from the left aren't working because people are not resonating with the left's message, they sound retarded, the way to start to damage the successful movement is to attack it from the right. And you do it through demoralization. Demoralization is one of the top tools that the communists use. It doesn't matter. Nothing's going to get better. You can't fix it. Let it get worse. Let them win. They're terrible. So we got to let them win more, because if we let them win more, then, you know, people will see just how bad, you know, the fucking Jews are and everything. He doesn't want to fix things, and he's trying to convince you to not be a part of fixing things. He's trying to convince you that anything good that's happening is a psyop, and that you're just becoming a pawn because you're going along with it. But really, you should be not trying to say blah blah blah. I can tell you this. This would do absolutely fucking nothing. I spent $300K. I had no option whatsoever to avoid prison. And by the way, I was COVID Cabal, even when it was at its like peak, was absolutely nothing in comparison to what his show was, right? They made a big deal about my political influence trying to put me in prison. Whereas Nick's political influence, no. What they do is they turn you. I guarantee you that he cooperated. He gave information on people. Guarantee it. He's the kind of person who's only going to look out for himself because he's a faggot. I'm telling you guys that. And you can see it in him. There is no honor in this man. He does not respect men who do things. He does not respect men who he wants to be looked at. He wants other people to listen to him rant. But if you actually put him in a situation where he had to uphold personal integrity, he's not going to do it. I'm telling you that. I can read him like a fucking book. It's enough I'm going to say about him. So to return to some of this thread, let me move ahead here. There is so legal Biden regime starts January 20th, 2021. One of its first acts, the Biden regime allowed China to access the US power grid. Okay, very interesting. Dominion starts sending all sorts of letters to people to basically, defamation lawsuits. They get rid of Lou Dobbs. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going down here. There is, because there's something important I want to talk about. Where is this? So there's some interesting stuff here. She talks about how people found out about Smartmatic's connections, including stuff related to the divorce of the president of Philippines, showing all of this money laundering going to him. But what's really interesting to me is that when she gets into this little group, what is this group called? Just give me a second here, guys. I'm scrolling through this thread. There's so much really good information here, but I want to get to the stuff that really, really jumped out for me. Okay. So Juan Andres Bautista's divorce was not the only problem for Smartmatic. A group of former intelligence community analysts had produced a document on 2020 election fraud that provided sufficient legal predicate to use NSA unprocessed raw signals data to prove the fraud by December 2020. In December 2020, the NSC's Director for Strategic Planning, Rich Higgins, gave a briefing on the document and complete data set to both the White House and President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. On January 4th, 2021, U.S. senators and staffers were also briefed on the document. Among the U.S. senators briefed were Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota and Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. Several NSC officials also got the documents. Neither Cramer nor Johnson nor Trump's NSC officials tried to authorize the investigation outlined in the docs. Had anyone called the phone number in the memo, they would have reached a senior legal counsel in the heart of the Pentagon. That one phone call would have launched an investigation using the unlimited resources of the U.S. government. We are talking about the NSA's raw signals data, which captures every kind of electronic comms on Earth. Okay, guys. So what do we always say? Q says we have it all, right? Q always said we have it all. NSA, no such agency. We have it all. It's there, okay? So we know that Q is connected to military intelligence in some way. We're going to find out maybe someday who exactly it is. I don't think it's Ezra Cohen, personally. I don't know who it is. I bet we never know who it is. Because a good intelligence thing is never going to tell us. But it's from some compartmentalized military intelligence agency. So, all right. Talks about Tina Peters, right? You guys know about Tina Peters still being harassed in Colorado prison on state charges. The county clerk of Mesa County, Colorado, was told to install a software update that would overwrite the rigged 2020 general election records, which is a violation of federal law. That's Tina Peters. She arranged a consultant to make a forensic image of the server before and after the software update. By August 2021, the passwords and data associated with Mesa County's 2020 election were leaked to the public. Colorado uses Dominion voting machines. Experts who reviewed the forensic images found that Mesa County's system did not meet Colorado's certification requirements. Why? The system failed to generate and preserve audit trail files. In fact, its audit features were disabled. Mesa's system also had uncertified software installed, which is illegal. It also allows the automated destruction of election records. It allows unauthorized charges to vote totals since it contains 36 wireless networking devices built into the voting system by the vendor. Two experts also found that new and authorized shadow databases were secretly created on the machine after vote counting began. Thousands of ballots that had already been counted were then secretly reprocessed inside the voting machine undetected by election officials. The system was also preset to erase critical records within a few days, which covered the tracks of anyone committing unauthorized access, software installation, or manipulation. This report was made public September 2021. Dominion and Colorado's Secretary of State destroyed all data on the hard drive of Mesa County's machines 1 month after the April 2021 election, even though federal, state, and election laws require the records to be preserved for 22 months. Nobody went to jail except Tina Peters. In August 2024, she was convicted on the 7 of 10 charges of engaging in a security breach to advance a false conspiracy theory of election fraud, sentenced to 9 years for preserving election records. Also worth knowing about Tina Peters, aside from the fact that she was a gold star mom, right? That means that her son was military, I think special forces, to be honest. Like, I think he was a Green Beret, and he died in combat. So she's a good woman. Basic point of all this stuff is that they also messed up her grand jury. Like, they won't show the grand jury transcripts because they manipulated information to even get the indictment to begin with. So there's a lot more dirt there. Now, this is the last thing I wanted to talk about. This is what I was waiting for. There was another group which investigated the stolen 2020 election from the very beginning. These men were intel professionals. One member was even inside Trump's NSC. This group was known as the Foot Patrol. Within a few days of the 2020 election, the Foot Patrol were providing accurate information about the voting machines to various public figures. That's because they had recruited former engineers from Smartmatic to map the entire system. The Foot Patrol put together a technical presentation, the briefing, to explain how the 2020 election was stolen in greater detail. They provided the briefing to important figures in 2020 to 2021. They explained the 14 different ways to steal the election with machines. They gave the briefing to senators, including Ron Johnson and Grassley. They did nothing. They gave it to the House Freedom Caucus. They did nothing too. According to my sources, the staff of the House Freedom Caucus were good, but the members were too scared to do anything. The chief of staff told one member that we don't want to touch this. So the Foot Patrol gave the briefing to one FBI agent in Washington, D.C. When it was over, the FBI agent told them to flee the city as soon as possible because they would be killed by the FBI if anyone found out what they were doing. They gave it to lawyers working for Trump's son-in-law. They did nothing too. The DA officials tried to stop the Foot Patrol from giving the briefing because they thought some of the info belonged to them. Foot Patrol also collected all the internet website information related to Dominion and Smartmatic to preserve the records. This is what's really interesting. That's when they found the ultimate source, the anonymous Japanese guy. It turns out one guy tracked all internet traffic flowing between Dominion, Serbia, and Hong Kong on election day 2020. And that one Japanese guy posted that info on his little anonymous account. The Foot Patrol contacted him to get all the IP addresses that Dominion used. What did the anonymous Japanese guy want for a full file of all the IP addresses that Dominion had used inside the USA on election day 2020? He wanted a $20 donation. To this day, nobody knows his name. So this stuff is this is really interesting. So there's a lot of stuff I'll say here. This IP info led to an astonishing discovery that the traders at CISA, the night of this day, the primary data center for the 2020 election, was hosted in a foreign country on a Huawei server. That's right, America's election system is in the hands of its enemies. CISA is supposed to be a place inside the DHS that protects America's vital infrastructure, but CISA is actually the nerve center where America's elections are stolen. In fact, CISA actually partners with Smartmatic to prepare beforehand. So look, that's all I'm going to say about the thread. You can read the rest of it. It's very good. I hope she keeps updating it with more stuff. There's so much in here that explains what was going on. And I want to tell you guys, like, it's OG stuff, right? But this is what we went through. This is what we were dealing with. And now things are about to change. Trump has just declared martial law in Washington, D.C., essentially, he's taken over control of it. And he's going to be using the National Guard as well as all federal agencies. And he's telling us already that this is going to be a precursor to what else is going on, right? To other cities, New York, Chicago, LA. I think that there is absolutely no question that we are going to get indictments and arrest. And what Bill Mitchell is saying here, as loony as Bill Mitchell is, did it occur to anybody that perhaps Trump is federalizing DC because indictments of Democratic leaders are about to come down and he knows the violent left will want to turn DC streets into a war zone? Yes, and did you notice the U.S. Marshals, right? I actually don't know what Lara Logan's mentioning there, but sounds very interesting. Maybe there's something with the U.S. Marshals. J.D. Vance just said, though, that these people need to be arrested. He said that they need to be arrested. He's not saying that this is a slap on the wrist, whatever. This is changing. Things are about to change. Okay? Trump takes federal control of D.C. for 30 days, deploys the National Guard to secure D.C. Secretary of Defense says unnamed special military units on standby. Trump notifies Smithsonian he's going to be reviewing their collections. That means that Trump will have access to the Smithsonian tunnels beneath the National Mall, while he just so happens to have military presence and full control of D.C. These tunnels could be used to mask the movement of troops, perps, equipment, etc. I find the timing of Trump conducting a comprehensive internal review of the Smithsonian museums to be a little suspicious, to say the least. So do I. You federalize control over DC, and then you say you're going to look at the Smithsonian. There's a lot more going on here, guys, and we really, like, you need to be prepared for the end, that we're going to have the cities taken back. It's not just about crime. It is about crime, but it's not just about crime, right? It is ultimately about taking down these people who are currently fortifying themselves in the states, in cities where they think that they have control. They know that they can't win America anymore, that they've lost this, but they want to create as much disruption as they possibly can, to stall as much as they can, and maybe to break off parts of the country if they can. It's not going to work. We're going to arrest them, and people are going to see what the fuck they've been doing. We need to see people getting hanged for what has been going on. And that's it, guys. That's the message today. We'll see if we have some drama coming up. Summer's ending. But I got to run, gentlemen. I will see you on the next COVID Cabal. Take care.